Hi, my name's Kevin McQuillan, and the following pre-recorded conversations are my attempt to make sense of the human experience through the practice of yoga. I hope you enjoy. This may be an unusual way for you to start a class, and if it is, good. That is good. I often start my classes like this as a way to shape why I'm teaching what I'm teaching, and so you can understand what my focus is. And I'll give you some examples of why this is important to me, and perhaps it's important to you, and we'll see how that goes. But the idea is to relate to this conversation as best as you can, and that's my attempt through teaching, is to solve problems. That's fundamentally why I teach. That's fundamentally why I'm on my mat. That's fundamentally why I speak, with the attempt to solve problems. And I don't know about you, but I got a lot of problems. I could imagine you have a lot of problems. Why? Because you're a human being. And sometimes we're foot to crown full of problems and trying to sort ourselves out. And the tendency when it comes to problems is we avoid them. Not all the time, but that is the tendency. And it goes something like, well, why bother? Why bother dealing with stuff that I don't want to deal with? And so I'm going to expand on that perspective. Why bother? And maybe you use it sometimes. The focus of this class is on shoulders. On shoulders, your shoulders. That's the focus. And I see bodies as maps. It's certainly true with my body. Certainly I see you as a map, and your body, and how we store certain things in our body. And I'll unpack what we hold in our shoulders. It's up on one of the whiteboards. On the right shoulder, we hold this experience of defensiveness. Ooh, you ever get defensive? Get the dukes up, these kinds of things, claws out, whatever. Defensiveness. In addition to that, this experience of attempting to control others and the self. Self, you. Attempting to control others and you, which we have a tendency of doing. I want to control you, so you do what I want you to do. Look how you're supposed to look. Say what you're supposed to say, and so you fit my little world in the perfect way. So I'm going to attempt to control you. I attempt to control myself because I'm a mess. A hot mess, perhaps. And I know it, and so I attempt to control myself. So I look a particular way to other people. That's the tendency. We have a lot of attention on looking a particular way in the presence of other people, and the way in which we create personas and the various different characters that we are is through control. On the left side is this experience of feeling undeserving. Left shoulder, undeserving. And yes, you guessed it, more control. This experience where we feel controlled by others. And you've felt that in your life, certainly in the past, maybe even now. You certainly will in the future, that's for sure. And so we have this experience of defensiveness, undeserving, and control issues that rest in our shoulders. And it is heavy, heavy. And we're holding this weight in our shoulders. The tendency is the shoulders start to turn in. They start to collapse. They start to collapse and turn in. And that's a protective measure, you could say. Shoulders round in, we're protecting something. What are we protecting? You could argue that it's your heart. No. Stop trying to control me. These kinds of experiences. And so we'll have a focus on shoulders and see where that takes you in your practice. And the idea is to reset your shoulders so you can stand up straight. When the shoulders round, the eyes drop. That's the tendency. Shoulders round, eyes drop. And so shoulders back, eyes up. That's the point. To have your eyes up, to see what's out in front of you, as much as you can see. Others, the world, and your future. That's one way you could look at it. With our eyes down, we're not seeing the world, we're not seeing others. We're not seeing the future in the ways in which we can. And that can be a concerning experience. And it's often a fear-based experience. I don't want to see other people. I've been to New York a number of times, and when I ride the subway, I'm also always so fascinated to watch people. Nobody's looking at each other. It's like nobody. It is so fascinating. Everybody's got their eyes down or shut or something. It's this grand distraction. It's a fascinating look. And that's how we can get into this experience of concern. Others are concerning. They're a threat. And that's a significant problem because it leads into this experience of why bother? Why bother connecting with people? Why bother connecting with myself? Why bother? I'm a bother, you're a bother. So why bother? I'm better off not associating with people. These kinds of things. I could imagine that you have experienced this over the last couple of years. It's been a very weird experience. Don't bother associating with people because they're dangerous. They'll probably kill you if you get too close. That's been the message. It's a bizarre message. That they're carriers of something that will kill you. So don't bother. Don't make that effort. And we've consumed that message for quite some time. But it's a message that already exists within us. Why bother? And it leads into, don't take the risk, it's not safe, leave it, back away. And we've been doing that with people in various different ways. I notice it all the time here, when people come here. How concerned people are being close to each other. It's like standing 10 feet away, having a conversation, and just the concern. And I get it, I understand it, but it's also very strange. We've kind of lost sight of what it's like to interact with people and how important it is. Instead, I'll stay quiet and obedient, which is a problem. You staying quiet and obedient, and that's been a message for sure. And it's been so striking because it's a message we already have within. Just stay quiet. Be obedient. And you could say, well, obedient to what? The master. Whoever the master is in your life. This is the master, for sure. If this is the master, guess what? This is the slave, your body. That's the tendency. The master is telling the body what to do, and we become obedient. And if we fall prey to that, we'll be obedient to other people as well, and we'll remain quiet. And if you look at your life, you're quiet. Somewhere in your life, you're quiet. Absolutely. Somewhere. As a consequence, life becomes bitter and unbearable. You'll become embittered. I can imagine some of you are right now. You could make the argument all of us are, in our own unique way, embittered and unbearable. Sometimes we can barely stand to be with ourselves, and if that's true, we can barely stand to be with other people. That's true too. Why bother? Why bother? It's such an interesting message, and it becomes so unbearable, you take out your misery out on yourself and others. And we can do that in all sorts of interesting, fascinating, and sophisticated ways. And how we can take our misery out on ourselves and other people based on being miserable. And it's very easy to become miserable in this world, if you haven't noticed. Where we stop making good decisions for ourselves. It's like, yes, I'm going to eat that dozen cookies. I'm going to drink that bottle of wine. I'm going to, I don't know, stir up some shit somewhere in my life. Send a snarky text message to somebody because they're a bother. These kinds of things. And we can stir some things up. I'm bothered, so because I'm bothered, I'm going to bother you. Because that seems right. And you want an example of that? You can look at your closest relationships and what happens when you get bothered. I could imagine you tend to bother other people. I'd go like, I am bothered and it's your fault. And let me tell you why it's your fault that I'm bothered. And so it is a tough stance is what I'm getting at. I'll give you an example of that in my life. I was married once. I was married. And that relationship didn't last. It lasted for about 10 years. Well, a little bit longer than that. Longer, but the marriage was 10 years. What I noticed in that marriage at some point was I was everything on the top board. I was bothered in the wrong way, is one way of putting it. And I was quiet and obedient. Quiet and obedient because that's what I was taught. I was taught that. In some ways by my father. This is what a man is supposed to be in a marriage. Quiet and obedient. And I adopted that practice. Unbeknownst to me in some ways, this unconscious stance in relationship. Be quiet and obedient. And what I gave up in that relationship was everything. Everything that was important to me, mostly. I'm not saying that to blame somebody, but that's the posture I had. That I'll give up my voice, I'll give up my opinions, I'll give up my values, I'll give up my self-respect to be in this relationship. It was horrendous. It was horrendous. When I woke up to that at some point, it was like, oh my God, there's nothing to me. I'm this hollow shell that just is obedient, not only to this misery that I've created for myself, but to somebody else as well. The version I have of myself that I was deeply disgusted by, which goes something and sounds something like, yes, dear. Which is horrifying. I wasn't saying that out loud, but that's how I was presenting myself in the relationship. It was pathetic. And the attempt to recover myself in that relationship was absolutely brutal. Brutal. To recover and regain myself and put myself back together where I could actually have some self-respect. Because I didn't have any. What I started to recognize that there was not enough of the relationship for that to occur. The relationship would not support the recalibration that I needed to go through to feel a part of that relationship in the way in which I needed to feel part of that relationship. Again, which has nothing to do with blame. Not about that. But I let myself go so far and allowed the relationship to follow that track. There wasn't enough to push against, to recalibrate, and to regain myself. And so the relationship ended, which was very painful, heartbreaking, which took me years to recover from. Years. It was brutal. I do not recommend it. That is for sure. And it's something I don't want to lose track of how tortured I was, because it is a good memory to hold on to. So I don't slip back into that. And it would be easy for me to slip back into that. Very easy. And so as a consequence of that experience, I've become a bother. Which sounds strange, but I bother. I bother myself, and I bother other people in the attempt to make the relationship better. So it's from like, why bother? I'm a bother, you're a bother, why bother? Let's just leave things as they are. It seems okay. To, I'm going to bother things. I'm going to bother myself so I can learn and shake myself up where I need to shake myself up. And I'm going to do the same with other people, and especially people that are closest to me, because I already know what's waiting for me. If I get stagnant in a relationship, it will not end well. And so be a bother. I've taken that stance. I'm going to bother you. The attempt is to mount a reasonable case to make the right effort. And the right case, to mount the right case is something like, I need to maintain my self-respect wherever I go. so I can have the kinds of relationships I want to have in life, ones that are meaningful, that matter, that I give, I get. And sometimes you have to be a brutal bastard to get your point across. And you can fill in the blank there. You don't have to call yourself a bastard, but you can fill in the blank. But I am a brutal bastard at times to get my point across. And it's not mean-spirited. That's not what it's about. But it's like, I'm saying something, and best you listen. And I'm relentless to get my message across now. And again, it's not about ill will or stripping somebody down. That's not what it's about. But I've honed this skill to be so direct, to cut through the nonsense and the listening. And I've crafted that skill over years because I know how important it is to get my point across. Because I have a point. Doesn't mean I'm always right, but I have a point. And I want people to hear my point. And so it can grow into a conversation. You have a say, I have a say, and we're in the attempt to make this thing better. Whatever this thing is. And ideally, it's a relationship that is going somewhere. Good for you, good for me, good for others. And we can't be that way if we're timid. Quiet and obedient. We can't be ferocious. You ever seen a bunny breathe fire? No. So being a bunny in this world, soft and fluffy, that's nice sometimes. But it's also being seen as harmless in this world. And that's not good. Align yourself properly so your efforts and speech emanate from the depths of you. What do you think this practice is about? That's what this practice is about. How to get right into the center of you. In my experience working with people, they have no idea what their center is, their core. It's too much of this, not enough of this. And so this practice is designed to get you into your core, where you're most aligned to what's important to you. And to emanate from that place, to get there and to stay there as long as you can. Because you already know what it's like not to live from that place. It's brutal. And if you want examples of that, just look at your life right now, where you're feeling tension. There's some tension spots in your life. I imagine that's a fair statement. At least one. What you'll notice is that tension is attempting to tell you something, like, wake up. You're out of alignment here. Why are you avoiding me? I'm trying to teach you something you know you need to learn. So wake up. And I won't stop bothering you until you address me. That's the tendency, isn't it? Sometimes we get it quite quickly. Sometimes we're so damn stubborn it takes years. And so this practice, this beautiful practice of yoga, is to sensitize you. And so when your body starts speaking, you start listening. Ah, thank you, sweet body, for telling me that I need to pay attention to this. Which is not easy. Especially if you have this mindset is, don't bother. Avoid, it's easy. Eat the bag of Doritos. Turn on Netflix. Pick up that bowl. Whatever. We're masters of avoidance in so many different ways. And it's risky business. So risky you don't want to take that path. And if you've been there, you know what I'm speaking about. It's very difficult to recover ourselves. Sometimes we never do. This type of expression encourages an element of salvation, and that is the attempt to save ourselves from ourselves. So we stop making poor decisions and putting ourselves in places we don't need to be, which includes some relationships. So the attempt through this practice is to work on your shoulders, to rid yourself of these experiences of feeling undeserving, defensive, control. I'll control you, don't control me, these kinds of things. All the games in which we play. So you can reset yourself, align yourself, and get yourself centered into what's most important to you, which is your value structure, which lives right in the heart of you. And that's the attempt through this practice, to get you centered. And ideally, you're ready for that. And so to make this real for you, hope you've been listening. We'll see if you have been. Where in your life currently are you saying, why bother? Oh, that's a stiff question so early in the morning. Where in your life are you currently saying, why bother? It's not worth it, doesn't matter. I have other things to do. I don't have the energy, I don't have the time. Maybe it's been something that's been poking around for a little while. Anybody have an answer to that? Extraordinary opportunity to be vulnerable. That's the calling. Vaccinations. Thank you so much for that. Family. Thank you for that. Who else? Where are you saying, why bother? Yes, thank you.
Impulsive spending.
Impulsive spending. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Yes. I like how you barfed that out. Good for you. Yes.
It wants to say it.
Yes. These are the things we don't want to say out loud. Right? It's like, say it out loud. Get it out of you. The problem with that, it makes it that much more real. Anybody else?
Eating.
Say it again.
Eating.
Eating. Thank you for that. Yeah. Relationships. Thank you for that. Okay. Closure. Yeah. Not so simple, but worth pursuing nonetheless. Thanks for sharing, saying these things out loud. There's a lot nestled into these experiences, where we're saying, why bother? It requires a tremendous amount of courage and focus and attention to unpack these things, and it's worth unpacking. Will it be painful? Of course. But it's best to grapple with the problem than not grapple with the problem, because at least you're building some semblance of a skill set and how to take care of yourself in new ways. And that's what this practice is all about. And so that is the practice, to take care of yourself this morning, to rattle yourself up a bit, because I'm going to give you plenty of opportunities to do such a thing. We'll see what comes flying out. You ready? Yes. All right. Nice to be with you. See you on the mat.